topic of tonight's talk is contradictions in the Buddhism or the Buddha's teachings. Why I want to talk about this is because there may be some of you who consider the Dhamma very important and may want to practice the Dhamma seriously. Is the speaker can hear? See, for somebody like me who has renounced, it is very important that I practice the true Dhamma, because I am investing my life in the Dhamma. Some of you may not invest your whole life in the Dhamma, but still you may want to invest 1 or 2 hours of your life in practicing the Dhamma. So, for those few of you that you practice the true, authentic Dhamma is also very important. For most people, this is not very important, whether you are practicing the really authentic Dhamma or not. For those people who come to the Buddhist society or the temple to do some dana, offerings, posi, or you come to do some chanting and then you go back very happy. If you practice very shallow in that respect, the Dhamma is not very important. In fact, for such a person, doesn't matter also what religion you belong to, because all religions teach you to do good, to avoid evil. And for most people, the aim is to go to heaven. So, they are not really practicing the Dhamma. The Dhamma of the Buddha is the highest Dhamma. It answers all the questions about the deepest questions you can ask about life. Where did we come from? And where are we going after this? And is life really worthwhile living, or is it better to get out of this round of rebirths? It answers all these questions. And so, if you want to practice the higher Dhamma, then you want to be sure you are investing your time and effort in the true, authentic teachings of the Buddha. So, I would just start off by mentioning some of the simple aspects first. Now, the first thing, one of the contradictions in the Dhamma. When I say contradictions, I mean, firstly, that different monks teach contradictory things. Sometimes a monk says something, then you hear another monk teaching something which is quite opposite to what this monk said. And sometimes you may get a third opinion or a fourth opinion. So, sometimes lay people become quite confused. Secondly, when I say contradictory, I also mean contradictory to the original teachings of the Buddha. Now, if we want to find out what actually is the original teachings of the Buddha, how do we go about it? This is answered by the Buddha in the suttas itself, the discourses, where the Buddha said, if in the future a certain monk says that such and such is the Buddha's teachings, then without welcoming his words or scorning his words, you should compare those words with the suttas, the discourses of the Buddha, and the Vinaya, the monk's disciplinary code. If it conforms to the suttas and the Vinaya, then you can accept it. If it does not conform, then the Buddha said, reject it. It is not the Buddha's teachings. So, the Vinaya is mainly for monks and nuns. So, when we talk about the suttas, which suttas should we refer to when we want to compare such and such a teaching with the original teachings of the Buddha? Now, nowadays there's a lot of suttas in the Buddhist world, but all schools of Buddhism agree that the earliest discourses of the Buddha are found in the earliest 4 Nikayas. Collections, Nikayas means collections, collections of the Buddha's discourses. And these are the Digha Nikaya, long discourses of the Buddha, Majjhima Nikaya, middle-length discourses of the Buddha, Sangyutta Nikaya, you could say topically group discourses, discourses that are grouped according to the topic. Then the fourth one is Anguttara Nikaya. You could say that is numerically arranged discourses. So these are the earliest discourses of the Buddha. So if you compare them with these earliest discourses of the Buddha, then you should be not far from the truth. And these 4 Nikayas, everyone is agreed that they are the earliest reliable sources of the Buddha's words. If you study these 4 Nikayas, you find that they have a consistent teaching. There is not much contradiction in these 4 Nikayas, except for very minor points. Now, the first thing I like to talk about, which is a glaring example of a contradiction, is that most of us have been taught that the Buddha was the son of a king. How many of you have heard and believe that the Buddha was the son of a king? Let's see your hands. Don't be shy to put up. Almost everyone has been taught that the Buddha was the son of a king. And actually, if you study the earlier suttas and the Vinaya, you find that this is not true. The Buddha's father was one of the Khattiya, warrior caste. Warrior caste. Just like now in Malaysia, we have a lot of Tunkus and Rajas, yes or not? Not all Tunkus and Rajas are kings, yes or not? Out of so many Tunkus and Rajas, only one becomes a Sultan. So in the same way, among the warrior castes, only one is selected to become the king. And we know from the Majjhima Nikaya, one sutta, I think Majjhima Nikaya 81, I think, it's a Dhammacettiya Sutta, that the Buddha was a citizen of the country called Kosala. And the king of Kosala was a man called Raja Pasenadi. King Pasenadi was the king of Kosala. And so it was not the Buddha's father. And the Buddha's father sometimes was said to be the chief of the Sakyans. Again, this is also not correct. The chief of the Sakyans was a man by the name of Bhaddiya. And this man, Bhaddiya, later renounced to become a monk with the Buddha. This is mentioned in our Vinaya books. And most people don't have the chance to read the Vinaya books, that's why you don't know. And this Bhaddiya later became an Arahant. After renouncing and becoming a monk, he became an Arahant. That's why his name was mentioned in the Vinaya books. So you see that the Buddha was not the son of a king. It just happened that his father was one of the rich, well-to-do warrior caste people. That's why it is said that the Buddha said that his father built 3 mansions for him, because in India there were 3 seasons. The winter season, then the summer season, then the rainy season. And for each of these seasons, 4 months, the Buddha spent his time in a different mansion. So, and he also mentioned that like during the rainy season, he spent 4 months in a mansion, and he was surrounded by all these slaves, all these female slaves to entertain him. And so he had a luxurious life when he was young. So this is the first thing that you ought to know, that the Buddha was not the son of a king. Another common thing that people have been told, that when the Buddha renounced to leave the home, he left in the middle of the night. He stole a glance at his wife and his son sleeping, and then he left in the middle of the night. Again, this is not true in the suttas. In the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha said that in front of his mother and father, he left the house, and they begged him not to leave. In front of them, he cut off his hair, wore the yellow robe, and walked off. So the Buddha had the courage to leave the home in front of his parents and not steal away like a coward at night. Another thing that is commonly taught, that for a Buddha to become a Buddha, he must practice the Bodhisattva path, make vows to become a Buddha, forgo the ability to become an Arahant, and then cultivate the paramis, perfections of character, over a long period of time. They like to say 4 asankheya kappas and 100 maha kappas. 1 kappa is a world cycle, and a world cycle is extremely long. Now they have found that this earth is a few billion years old, and still the world has not ended. So the Buddha said 1 world cycle, 1 kappa is quite hard to imagine. It is so long, it's quite hard to imagine how long it is. And 1 asankheya kappa means an uncountable number of kappas. So it's very strange. If 1 asankheya kappa is uncountable, why they say 4 asankheya kappas? 1 is uncountable, whether it's 10 or 100 or a million is still uncountable. So, in the legend about the Buddha, it is said that long time ago, the Buddha was an ascetic called Sumedha, and he met the Dipankara Buddha. And because of being awed by the Dipankara Buddha, that he made a vow to become a Buddha. And according to the legend, he met 24 successive Buddhas who predicted that he would become a Buddha one day. All this is just a story that grew up later. In the later books, they even say that the Buddha's mother was a virgin, just like Jesus Christ. They say the Buddha's mother was a Virgin Mary. All this is because of the adoration of the Buddha. They put him so high that he becomes like a super human being. Now, as far as the suttas are concerned, there is no evidence for this at all. In fact, the word parami is not even mentioned by the Buddha. It appears like the Buddha also never heard this word parami. So, in fact, these stories about the Jataka stories, about how the Buddha cultivated the paramis over a long period of time. In the Mahayana tradition, they talk about six paramis. In the Mahayana tradition, they talk about 6 paramis. In the Theravada, they talk about 10 paramis. And if you actually study these Jataka stories, you find that they are too childish to believe that they could be real, like animals talking, animals behaving like human beings. Even the rabbit that can sacrifice its life to the hunter by jumping into the pot. All this is too childish to believe. Even the story about the Buddha in the previous life, when cultivating the parami of giving his body to the tiger to eat, that also doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? Because it contradicts the Buddha's words in the sutta. The Buddha said, if you make an offering and it harms yourself or it harms another being, then that's not a good person's offering, not a wise person's offering. So if you sacrifice your body to the tiger, that doesn't make sense, right? So imagine if that person sacrificed the body to the tiger, how the parents would suffer because the son died. And also after the tiger has eaten the human being, tomorrow he'll look for another human being to eat. Yes or not? So it doesn't make sense. Even that Vesantara Jataka, where the Buddha was supposed to have given away his wife and his children to a heartless beggar who beat them, that also doesn't make sense at all. Yes or not? How can a person give away the wife to somebody to torture and the children to somebody to torture? Doesn't make sense at all. So all these were created later. Actually, you find in the suttas that the Buddha, after he became a Buddha, one night he contemplated the past, and he contemplated for a long time, probably the whole night. He said he looked into 91 world cycles, 91 kappas, and he saw 6 Buddhas in the past. He mentioned the names of 6 Buddhas. That's all you hear in the suttas about the past Buddhas. Only 6 Buddhas. There's no such thing as 24 or 28 Buddhas. And out of these 6 Buddhas, the Buddha only met one Buddha. That was the previous Buddha called Kassapa Buddha. And according to that sutta, Gatikara Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, at that time the Buddha was a Brahmin by the name of Jotipala. And he had a good friend who was a strong supporter of the Buddha. And his good friend asked him to see the Buddha. Many times he refused. He had no respect for the Buddha. I said, why go and see your shaveling teacher? So his friend had to pull him, literally pull him. Then only he went to see the Buddha. And when he went to see Kassapa Buddha, he didn't want to pay respect to Kassapa Buddha. He just said, hello, hello, and then he sat down. And then his friend, out of compassion, told the Kassapa Buddha, said, Bhagawa, Saichin, world-honored one. He said, this is my good friend, Jotipala. He's a Brahmin. He said he's a Brahmin to make the Buddha understand why he won't pay respect. So, he asked the Buddha to teach his friend some Dhamma. So, the Kassapa Buddha taught him some Dhamma. And immediately he changed. After that he renounced and he became a monk under the Kassapa Buddha. And then he practiced and attained jhana. Because he had attained jhana in that life, after that he passed away, he went to Tusita heaven. When he came back from Tusita heaven as a young boy, he could attain jhana under the jambu tree. Jhana is this meditative absorption, chanting, they say. So, it shows from here that actually the Buddha very probably was a Sakadagamin, a second fruition Arya, Sakadagamin, once returner. Because once returners like the Buddha, they are like the durian that is ripe. When the durian is ripe, it must fall, yes or not? Whether there's a wind or there's no wind, it will still fall. So, Sakadagamin, the second fruit Arya, when he comes back the last time as a human being, he must attain enlightenment because he is like a ripe fruit. So, such persons like the Buddha, because of being an Arya, that's why even he had a very good life as a warrior caste prince. He renounced his parents, renounced his home, renounced his wife and son to go and cultivate himself. And he practiced so hard which an ordinary person would not go to that stage of torturing himself. He tortured himself until he attained enlightenment. So that is how actually Buddhas become Buddhas. That is, they usually, to me, they become a Sakadagamin first. After they become a second fruit Arya, then they come back. They strive to attain enlightenment. Another thing they like to say, sometimes I say the Arahant path is selfish. The Arahant has not completed his work. The Arahant path is not selfish. Arahant path, he is walking the path to cut off the self. And an Arahant, one who is liberated, has no more self. So an Arahant, he sees all beings as part of himself, all in his mind. He sees the world like a dream, and he has great pity for all beings because he realizes that they are all struggling in samsara, not able to get out of samsara. That's why you find all the suttas that were handed, the Buddha's teachings that were handed down to us was all the work of the Arahants. They memorized all the Buddha's teachings in order to pass it down from generation to generation until it comes down to us. So in fact, the Arahant is the completely unselfish person. Completely unselfish because he has no more self. In fact, the Bodhisattva is not unselfish. The Bodhisattva is still selfish because he still has the self. That's why you find, for example, in this Vesantara Jataka, where he gave away his wife and gave away his children, that actually is a very selfish act. Yes or not? For somebody who wants to become a Buddha, giving away his wife and giving away his children to suffer, just because he wants to attain enlightenment, it's very selfish, isn't it? So the most unselfish person is the Arahant. The most compassionate person is the Arahant. Another thing nowadays is that there's a lot of stress on meditation. In fact, sometimes over stress on meditation. So much so that sometimes some meditation teachers tell their students not to study the suttas, not to study any books, only meditate. This is not according to the Buddha's teachings. Firstly, why do we want to meditate? Because we want to get out of samsara, isn't it? So if we want to get out of samsara, the Buddha said that we have to practice the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay? The Noble Eightfold Path can be said to consist of 3 sections. Sila, Samadhi, Panya. In Mandarin they say Jie Ting Hui, Kai Ting Chi Wai. Yes or not? So in the suttas, the Buddha says that these 3 things are 3 trainings. The first one is a training in the Adi Sila, the higher moral conduct. Training in the higher moral conduct. The second one is a training in the Adichitta. Adichitta is the higher mind. And the higher mind, developing the mind so that it becomes an elevated mind, a developed mind. That's why sometimes meditation is also called bhavana. Bhavana means development. That means developing your mind so that it goes above an ordinary mind. The third training is called the training in the Adipanya, the higher wisdom. Now, the Adi Sila, the higher morality or higher moral conduct, has 2 parts. One is the negative part, one is the positive part. The negative part of doing good and the positive part of doing good. The negative part of doing good means not to harm others. And that means keeping your precepts. When we keep our precepts, we restrain ourselves from harming others. In fact, the 5 basic precepts are to restrain us from harming others. Not to kill, not to steal, not to commit adultery, not to lie. The last one, not to drink or take intoxicants, which basically harm ourselves. So, the a positive part of the adisila, of doing good, is dana, charity, charity or generosity, or making offerings. So, this is the most basic practice, especially for lay people. Why? Because the Buddha said, if a person does not practice sila and dana, precepts and charity, that person won't be able to be reborn as a human being or in heaven. A person who does not practice precepts and charity will be reborn in the woeful plains. That's why the very basic practice is precepts and charity. The Buddha said, if you keep a low degree of sila, precepts and charity, then you will be reborn with a human body, but you won't have much luck. You'll be born in a poor family, you find it hard to make a living and all that. If you have a medium degree of precepts, of keeping the precepts and charity, then you'll be reborn as a human being, but with much luck, with much blessings. You'll be born to a rich family, good family, easily can make a good living, etc. And then if you keep a high degree of precepts and charity, the Buddha said you'll be reborn as a heavenly being, where you will enjoy life for a long time. So this is the Adi Sila, training in the higher moral conduct. And then the second part, the training in the Adichitta, the higher mind, is actually in the suttas mentioned to be the 4 jhanas, the 4 states of meditative absorption. Why the 4 jhanas? Because according to the suttas, when we attain jhana, meditative absorption, the mind becomes so still, so much under control, that the 5 hindrances drop away. The 5 hindrances are what block us from seeing clearly. The 5 hindrances are what block us from having wisdom. And these 5 hindrances are sensual desire, ill will or anger, sloth and torpor. In Chinese they say fan chen. And then the 4th one is restlessness and worry. And then the 5th one is doubt. So these 5 things block us from seeing clearly, just like dark glasses. If you wear dark glasses, you try to see a certain color, you may swear that it's a certain color, but when you take away your specs and dark glasses, you see that it's different. So that is the Adi Chitta. Then the Adi Panya is the higher wisdom. And the 2 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path to do with the wisdom is right view and right thoughts. Right view and right thoughts. That means you must have right view and right thoughts. In fact, in the suttas, Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 117, it is mentioned that to practice the Noble Eightfold Path, you must first get right view. If you haven't gotten right view, you have not entered the Noble Eightfold Path. So the first factor to get is right view. And we read from the suttas that actually if a person has right view, that means he is an Arya already. He's already an Arya. So that means even the lower stage of Aryahood, namely the first path, the first path attainer also has right view. So it is very important to get right view. So how do you get right view? Now in the suttas, Majjhima Nikaya, I think 43, it is said that there are 2 conditions for getting right view. And what are these 2 conditions? The first one is listening to the Dhamma, listening to the original Dhamma, the discourses of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha. And the second factor is having yoniso manasikara, So this word yoniso manasikara is very important. What is yoniso manasikara? Yoni means the womb where something is born, the source of something. And manasikara means work of mind. Kara means work. Mana is the mind. So work of mind, that means consideration or contemplation or attention. So yoniso manasikara means thorough consideration. That means contemplation or consideration that goes back to the source of the problem. That means if you have yoniso manasikara, that means you have a very clear mind. A mind that doesn't have much hindrances. That means a person with not much hindrances is a person who is quite intelligent, who has a high IQ and all that. And he's not blocked by heavy karma, obstructive karma. So such a person, when he hears the Dhamma, he is able to see clearly the Dhamma. And that's why you find in the suttas and the Vinaya that many people who came to listen to the Buddha give a graduated discourse. The Buddha usually gave a graduated discourse to newcomers, and this graduated discourse is said to consist of 9 things. The first one is dana, giving or charity. The second point is sila, moral conduct. The third one is a result of these 2 things, going to heaven. The fourth one is the folly, the vanity of sensual pleasures. How sensual pleasures are useless in the sense that they never satisfy, make us more hungry for it. And then the fifth one, renunciation, when we understand that there's nothing in the world that can really satisfy us, make us content, and then we renounce. And then after that, followed by the 4 noble truths. And normally, after the Buddha has given this graduated discourse on these 9 things, that person is said to have attained the Dhamma vision, Dhamma Chakku, or vision of the Dhamma. That means that person has attained the first path. And before that person dies, he will automatically get the first fruition. So that is how a person gets right view by having yoniso manasikara and listening to the true Dhamma of the Buddha. So from here you see that actually the most important thing for us, if we want to practice the Noble Eightfold Path, is to listen to the original teachings of the Buddha. That is why the Buddha called his disciples savakas. Savakas are listeners or hearers. I think in Chinese they translate it as shengwen, isn't it? Shengwen, savakas. So the Buddha's disciples are called listeners or hearers because they listen to his word. If we don't listen to the word of the Buddha, the original teachings of the Buddha, however much effort we put into the spiritual path, it is not much use. During the Buddha's time or even outside the Buddha's time, there were ascetics who practiced very hard. And some of them even attained spiritual powers, psychic powers. And yet, they could not become enlightened. They could not even get the first path, the lowest path, Aryan path also they could not get because they had not listened to the right teachings of the Buddha. So we are very fortunate. We live in you can say, the Buddha era. We are still in the era of the Buddha because we are able to listen to the original teachings of the Buddha. Unfortunately, the original teachings are mixed with a lot of other teachings. And so most people find it very difficult to separate the true Dhamma from the false Dhamma. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, if a person says, what is our Dhamma is what is contrary to the Dhamma. If a person says, what is our Dhamma is Dhamma, then he creates much demerit for himself. And then he harms a lot of humans and devas. and he causes the disappearance of the true Dhamma. But if a person says what is our Dhamma, that means he dares to criticize what is not Dhamma as not Dhamma, then he creates much merit for himself. And then he benefits a lot of humans and devas. And he preserves the true Dhamma. So because of that, it is the duty of monks who know to speak out what is not Dhamma, to criticize that as not Dhamma, and to establish the true Dhamma.